We welcome in Hall of Famer John Smoltz, our good friend, calling the National League playoffs and the World Series for Fox. John, Brian Kenny here. Great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be on, Brian.
We've talked a bunch about these things before, but I just want to know from you, the back-to-back high-profile series, Dodgers-Padres, Dodgers-Mets, how tense, what has the atmosphere been like for you?
Well, I'm having the time of my life because it's been really good storylines, narratives. Obviously, two teams that couldn't stand each other in the first series. You've got a great story in what the New York Mets have done, and then, of course, all the pressure in the world on the Dodgers. I just like the narratives. At this time of the year, you've got to put away the noise. Not easy to do, over-magnified, and part of my job is to kind of explain why that is. And the Dodgers have done a great job to this point handling all that's come with the expectation of a World Series or bust.
I want to ask you about that because there was so much noise around there. The Dodgers looked so done against the Padres, and there was noise everywhere. What was your overall reaction to that?
Yeah, they were having to play desperate, right? I mean, they've got a beat-up rotation. Nobody feels sorry for you in this game when you have injuries, and they have had a slew of them. And there's been a lot of teams that have that. And so they did the best thing they could, and when they were up against an elimination game, they pitched a perfect game, and they haven't stopped pitching a perfect game since. Look, their offense is going to be good enough for no matter what and who they face. It's whether or not they get enough depth in their innings out of their starters that are here. It reminds me a little bit about Texas. Texas had lost a couple starters last year and found a way to win the World Series. Every guy steps up and knows they got to do a little bit more. So when it works, it's magical. And when it doesn't, it means one guy just didn't have his stuff when he comes in to get those three guys out.
And John, you and I have worked together for a long time. Even I'm surprised to see the totality of the bullpen attack, all these bullpen games, especially early on. And worked for the Tigers, working sporadically for the Dodgers. What's your overall take on the state of the game with that?
Yeah, I think when there's situations where you have no choice, you've got to do it. I think sometimes you can overthink it and not use a guy that you depended on all year just because, again, we magnified the situation late in the season if a guy struggles and you lose confidence in him. The teams that are patient and don't lose confidence, but sometimes you've got to pull a magic trick out of your hat, and that's what Dave Roberts did with his bullpen. And I think overall, is this a formula that can win long-term in a postseason? No. You can't do this 3 out of 5 games, but you can do this and reset your rotation and give your team a chance, like the Dodgers did, to get back in the series and then win it.
What was your thoughts on Senga last night, the Mets going with him when they had their top 2 available?
Yeah, he just didn't have it. And certainly when you're a pitcher starting a game and you know you're not going deep, sometimes you put too much pressure on being perfect early. He didn't have his forkball. He didn't have his command.
But they didn't have to go to him, John. You know what I mean? I'm surprised that the guy pitched 5 innings all year.
I think the one thing that the Mets are relying on is that they're going to win the war even if they lose the battle. And what I mean by that is their starting pitching is so good from this point on, they're set up perfectly. And so now their starting pitching has to be their leverage and has to be how they won. That's how they've done it. You got to understand those comebacks were possible because their starters matched the other starters. And that's what the Mets have been so great at, finding a way to win a baseball game no matter what the scenario is. So I just think that their starting rotation is a strength. And to your point, yesterday they tried to do something they thought would work. It didn't.
You brought this up last night, how a series can change quickly. I always remembered this one. I don't know how many people do, but the 96 NLCS. Here we go. Look, the Cardinals have you guys 3-1. That's La Russa's Cardinals, and you guys won 14-0. You pitched that game, right? 14-0.
Yeah.
3-1, 15-0. So you've seen and you've lived through these strange things before. How do you figure that? Like how a series in mid-series can suddenly become something totally different?
It's when something shocks the other team's system. You not that you let your guard down, not that the Cardinals let their guard down, but we went on a massive roll. I think in the next 2 games in the World Series, we beat the Yankees 11-1, 12-2, something like that. So that's a historic 5-game run, and then we didn't win another game. And the momentum can switch like that. That's why you can't pay attention to the narratives. Each game has to be its own special game. That's hard for the human brain to concept sometimes when you have 1,000 media asking you questions they would never ask you in the regular season, talking about things you would never talk about in the regular season. And that's why postseason is a total different animal.
I think you mentioned this too last night. In the new format, we've seen the top clubs, the last 2 years at least, getting knocked out in the first round. You wonder, are we protecting the division champions, the top 2 seeds enough? This year, 3 of the 4 teams that had a bye got through. Is that happenstance or is that a good sign?
I hope it's a good sign. Look, you want to be the best team in baseball. You don't want to incentivize anybody to think that this is not a good format. And so for 3 out of 4 to get by, really it's the offense that struggles the most in 5 days. It's not the pitching. And fortunately, 3 of the 4 did get by, so the narrative changes a little bit. Can you imagine if 3 of the 4 didn't get by again? That would have been 3 years in a row, and there would have been talk about how do we tweak it, because this is not good for baseball. You want to give the teams, and look, give credit to the teams that get in at the last minute. They've been able to run the gamut in some cases. So baseball's a strange game. I just wish that more series, I wish the first would be, maybe you can have 2 out of 3, but I want to see a 4 out of 7 in that division series. I want to see that be the determining factor, that if you have that rest and you lose 4 games in that 4 or 7, tip your hat and just know you didn't get it done. 3 out of 5, so many things are kind of up for chance. So hopefully we can get to another 4 out of 7 series, which would really be an indicator that that rest wouldn't have as much of an impact.
What's the impact on the totality of the tournament, though, right? That's a long postseason, or is that all good?
I think it's all good. You'd have to shorten the regular season. Don't get me wrong. You can't play 162 games. So there's a lot of things that would have to go into changing. But, you know, when you think about, again, the best teams not moving forward, people are always asking, well, what do you do? You know, what if this keeps going? And my answer would be make it a best of 7. And then there's no excuses. Because a best of 5, you lose the first game or second game, and it's hard, right? There's not much room. Even though the Dodgers were able to pull it off, most teams aren't.
Right.
And that's the chance of a best of 5 that I'd like to eliminate and have a best of 7.
All right, John, I know you're running around. You got manager meetings and everything else. You got an afternoon ball game, day game after a night game, all that. John, always good talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brian.